The following video is intended for mature audiences. It contains horror elements, adult themes, and language that might not be suitable for younger viewers. The horror landscape continually evolves, adapting to cultural fears and aesthetic innovations. However, Terrifier 2 is a beast all its own, a film that balances nostalgia for the slasher classics with the stomach-churning intensity of modern horror. Directed by Damien Leone, this 2022 release pushes boundaries not just in its shocking level of gore, but in its ability to tap into psychological terror, crafting a narrative that intertwines the surreal with the brutally real. In this entry, Art the Clown returns, and his presence alone is enough to evoke dread, especially for those who harbor a phobia of clowns. With a menacing grin and silent but brutal demeanor, Art redefines the slasher archetype. His interaction with reality, and perhaps an even more sinister dreamscape, breathes life into the unsettling, inescapable fear that Terrifier 2 harnesses from the beginning. The visual and tonal style of Terrifier 2 is one of its most distinctive traits, with Leone crafting an aesthetic that feels simultaneously retro and modern. Fans of classic horror will find nods to films like A Nightmare on Elm Street, where dream realms bleed into reality. Leone blurs these boundaries, plunging the viewer into the surreal experience of Art's victims, especially Sienna, whose connection to him feels both nightmarish and deeply personal. This setup brings to mind Freddy Krueger's psychological grip over his victims, but elevates it by removing the usual safety nets. Art is not constrained by rules, logic, or even the boundaries of reality, which fuels the constant tension. The film also incorporates hints of fantasy in Sienna's character, whose fierce, almost warrior-like personality is reminiscent of a modern-day heroine. Her resilience and refusal to submit to fear set her apart from typical slasher victims and enhance the narrative's emotional investment. Sienna's dynamic with her younger brother, Jonathan, reinforces the core of Terrifier 2. It's a story as much about family and trauma as it is about survival against monstrous evil. Art the Clown's silence is what makes him so terrifying. Like Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, his silence adds an element of unpredictability, but it's Art's gleeful expressions and his enjoyment of violence that elevate him to a league of his own. He doesn't just kill, he revels in the horror he inflicts, using his artistry to create twisted masterpieces from his victims. Throughout the film, Art's motivations are intentionally vague, which makes him even more chilling. His killing spree is not bound by personal vendettas or trauma. It's fueled by an inexplicable, almost supernatural malevolence. By sidestepping a rational explanation, Leone reinforces the idea that true horror often lacks reason, leaving Art as an embodiment of pure chaotic evil. For horror fans, this lack of motivation aligns with classic slasher conventions, yet Art's persona feels fresher and far more sinister. If there's one element of Terrifier 2 that will polarize audiences, it's the unflinching gore. Leone, who also took charge of the practical effects, spares no detail in crafting some of the most gruesome scenes in recent horror memory. The gore doesn't merely serve to shock, it becomes an integral part of Art's character, highlighting his sadistic nature and his pleasure in crafting scenes of terror. However, for those who prefer their horror with a psychological edge over visceral splatter, this level of gore may feel excessive. While some horror aficionados appreciate the sheer audacity of Leone's effects work, others may feel that the relentless brutality overshadows the underlying story. As someone who doesn't shy away from bloodshed in films, I found myself wrestling with the extremes here. In many ways, the gore detracts from the psychological and emotional tension by prioritizing spectacle over subtlety. For those unable to stomach graphic scenes, this film will be challenging. Terrifier 2 achieves a unique, vintage-inspired aesthetic that feels like a love letter to slasher cinema. The grainy cinematography and practical effects harken back to the 1980s, echoing Halloween and Friday the 13th. Leone's work creates an atmosphere that feels dark, intimate, and terrifyingly immersive, as if the viewer has slipped into an alternate reality where fear is an unrelenting presence. This retro vibe, coupled with a story that is both fantastical and grounded, helps the film stand out from typical slasher reboots or sequels. One of the film's most surprising aspects is its pacing. Terrifier 2 allows its story to unfold more slowly, emphasizing the psychological buildup rather than jumping immediately into bloodshed. This pacing gives viewers a chance to connect with Sienna and Jonathan as they come to terms with the danger lurking just out of sight. By slowing down the action, Leone creates a more impactful narrative, one where every quiet moment builds anticipation, creating an almost unbearable sense of dread before each horrific reveal. At its core, Terrifier 2 explores the psychology of fear and survival in a world where safety is an illusion. Sienna's character represents resilience, a fierce determination to confront her worst nightmares head-on, and her journey is as much psychological as it is physical. Jonathan, too, has his own struggle with fear, embodying the innocence lost in the face of trauma. As siblings, their bond is both a source of strength and of vulnerability, a reminder of what they both have to lose. The film suggests that surviving Art's carnage isn't merely a battle of wits or physical endurance, but a test of emotional fortitude. Facing such a relentless monster requires characters to confront their own darkest fears. While Terrifier 2 may not be for the faint of heart, it's undeniably a distinctive entry in the horror genre. In an era where jump scares and CGI are the go-to tools, Leone's reliance on practical effects and slow-building suspense is refreshing. The film's willingness to indulge in gruesome detail without relying on digital trickery lends a tactile, visceral quality that's increasingly rare in horror cinema. It's a bold move that respects the intelligence and bravery of the audience, while paying homage to the visceral thrill of slasher classics. Yet what ultimately makes Terrifier 2 unique is its ability to blend the fantastical with raw human emotion. It isn't just about survival, but about grappling with trauma, resilience, and the courage it takes to confront one's fears. While the extreme violence may be a deterrent for some, the film's depth and its ability to evoke a sense of dread are undeniable. Its horror lingers not just in the gore, but in the psychological scars it leaves behind. Terrifier 2 is not an easy film to categorize. It's a slasher, a psychological thriller, and a dark fantasy rolled into one, and this amalgamation is part of what makes it so compelling. It's a movie that stays with you, not only because of the haunting imagery, but because of the emotional journey it takes you on. The characters, especially Sienna, give the story an emotional core that's often missing in horror sequels, while Art the Clown's enigmatic presence solidifies him as one of the most memorable horror villains in recent memory. This film is not for everyone. If you have a low tolerance for gore or find clowns particularly disturbing, Terrifier 2 will challenge you in ways few films can. But for those who appreciate a story that dares to push boundaries and redefine fear, Terrifier 2 is a must-watch. It's an experience that captures the darkness of nightmares, the strength of survival, and the chilling reality that some monsters can never be truly defeated. While the excessive gore might prevent me from revisiting this film series, I can't deny its impact. Leone has crafted something truly unsettling and unforgettable, a film that respects the horror genre while boldly venturing into new territory. Terrifier 2 is a slasher splatter supernatural teen horror that is 2 hours and 18 minutes long and is unrated. The Southern Underworld gives it 4 bloody knives. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. Thank you for watching.